Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the regular council meeting for Monday, March 11th to order. Territorial acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the city of Colwood lies within the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples represented by the Kasapsum and Songhees nations. We thank them for sharing these lands in peace and friendship. Approval of the agenda. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the near-term agenda and adoption of today's agenda of the regular council. Thank you, Olson and Jensen. Are any opposed? Seeing none, move on. Mayor's message. We are very honored this evening to be joined by the Ng family, who are residents of Colwood. In particular, I want to acknowledge Alora. So Alora, if you could stand up, that would be great so everyone can see who you are. And Alora recently competed in the gymnastics competition at the 2024 BC Winter Games held in Quesnel from February 22nd to the 25th. Despite stiff competition, Alora finished in the top 6 in all her events and won 3 gold medals. This is truly an outstanding personal achievement for her, and she has certainly made our entire community proud. I understand, Alora, you achieved a personal best score of 9.6 out of 10 in the uneven bars. That's fantastic. Alora will be competing in the upcoming Inspire Cup that's held here in Victoria, featuring international as well as athletes from across Canada. Just on behalf of the city of Colwood, Alora, I would like to congratulate you and wish you the best of luck at the Inspire Cup. And regardless of the outcome, we are also very proud of you for all your achievements. Thank you, Alora. Just moving on to my second item, we had the Victoria Symphony played for the second time here in Colwood at Royal Roads last Friday evening. Wasn't able to join. I was at the Japanese Embassy on Friday. But thanks to Arts and Culture Colwood for organizing and being the volunteers at this event. Understand it was another success. Understand Councillor Grove, you were in attendance. And they actually solved the parking problem. So from the first concert. So thanks again to Arts and Culture Colwood. That's all I have for in my mayor's message. Just move on to adoption and receipt of the minutes. Are there any errors or omissions from any of the minutes attached to the agenda? Seeing none, may I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Grove and Councillor Jensen. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. We'll move on. Come to public participation. We have one written submission that is appended to the agenda, and we had none that were submitted after the cutoff time. Members of the public will be given the opportunity to present their concerns or ask questions of council. You'll be given 2 minutes, at which time you'll see that you'll see the red light go on. Well, actually, it's a green, amber, and a red. Red means we're going to cut you off. So, alternately, if you wish to address the your public participation at the item, you can do it at that time. Generally, you'll have to wait. So, I would encourage you maybe to do it front here. So, is there anyone that wishes to speak for the item later on? Okay, Mr. English, or now? Okay, so we can move on with this. So I'll welcome the first person up, please. Cindy Andrew.
Thus begins the clock. Good evening. I'm Cindy Andrew, a longtime resident and steward, longtime resident of Colwood and a steward of the Village Initiative, a regional network of nearly 60 organizations who have a shared goal of supporting the health and well-being of young people across the West Shore and Souk. First of all, I should start with thank you to the City of Colwood for being part of this village. And thanks to those of you who were able to join us in the recent Youth Health Forum, the first of its kind in our region, frankly, if not the province. And that event brought together 110 leaders and the voices of young people. From the results of the Adolescent Health Survey and the related workshop that featured 42 young people who came together to do a deep dive into those results, reflect on what met for them, and come up with some recommendations, they have most certainly spoken. They have identified priority actions that need to be taken, and they need to be taken now. I should mention, those priority recommendations have a ton of literature behind them in terms of the evidence base, which is always an important anchor. The priorities are featured in the roadmap shared with you tonight. It's also on the villageinitiative.ca, and they include public transit, by far the highest priority relating to safety first, as well as the one's ability to connect and stay connected within the community. Another is safe, accessible, inclusive places for youth, which would also provide much needed space for service providers. Programs and services, the recent announcement about Foundry is but one, providing opportunity for people to connect with elders, with mentors, with other youth, and some possibilities that are really only possible to achieve through collaboration. Thank you. I got beeped off the stage like the Oscars.
Thanks very much, Cindy. Next, please.
Carol Brown, Scenic. This might be after the fact, but I'm going to go ahead. We wish very much to support the acceptance of the Pesticide Use Bylaw number 1995, 2023 Integrated Pest Management Plan. Scenic applauds that the City of Colwood is taking steps to implement a pesticide use bylaw to help reduce the amount of cosmetic or non-essential pesticides used on private lands in Colwood. As the city has noted, pesticides present a potential health risk, especially to children and animals, as well as the environment. Although used for one targeted pest, many beneficial organisms may be adversely affected by pesticides. The citizens of Colwood value their environment and recognize the need to safeguard waterways and ecological habitats. Scenic supports the acceptance of this pesticide use bylaw. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Carol. In fact, it is on for first, second, and third reading tonight. So next, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Transportation planning. Our new city council is now 16 months into its term of office. On February 26th, city staff identified it was going to be another 18 months before a draft of an updated transportation master plan would be available for the city. This would mean that for at least 3/4 of the term of the current council, and possibly the entire term, our new city council will have to continue to work with guidelines that city staff had developed under the direction of the former council. This is unacceptable to us. The voters had firmly rejected the plans and behaviors of the previous city council during the last election. We voted for change. We'd like to see change. We understand the city is working on a transportation modeling tool that will more realistically be based on the way people in Colwood actually live and will use real traffic data. There's no reason why the city cannot immediately start using this new tool for more realistic planning. And this would be a much more legitimate process and then continuing to use the 2019 Bunt and Watt joint memo, who were prohibited from considering all of the options available to the city. It would also be more legitimate than using the high-cost active transportation network proposal that city staff has prepared, which has never been approved by city council. Uh, So we would ask that the mayor and council move to adopt this interim transportation modeling tool based on realistic data and the way people in Colwood actually live. Another topic, the public confidence in the city of Colwood. To improve public confidence and trust, we would also urge the city to immediately implement a policy stipulating that elected officials are expected to immediately recuse themselves from any city discussions, meetings, or decision-making processes where they or others might perceive them to be in an actual, potential, or perceived conflict of interest. If I can have just one more second, we'd also like to support Council Kim Jordison's motion for the city to use its purchasing power to negotiate a more economical garbage pickup service for Colwood citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. English. Next, please.
Good evening. I'd like to speak with respect to agenda item 8.3, which relates to the.
Could we get your name and address,
Oh,
please?
Brendan Dwyer, 137 Caspian Drive. Which relate, agenda item 8.3, which relates to the potential rezoning of 2346 Caspian Drive. 2346 Soup Road to allow for the potential construction of a 55-unit purpose-built rental. I don't think it's any particularly great secret that housing construction nationwide is not keeping up with demand, and I would just like to articulate my own personal support for this project and my belief that a purpose-built rental would be a more sensible use of that space than the single-family detached home which currently occupies that lot, as well as my more general hope that this council will be friendly towards potential housing constructions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Seeing none, we shall move on then. Is there someone else? Oh, there's.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Bill Noble. I wasn't aware of any protocol for submitting a document to you prior to this meeting tonight or getting on the agenda, but I'd like to, if I could, just take a few minutes to present a letter signed by the residents of Seafield Road. Most of the residents signed it. It has to do with the new Two Waters development. We have some issues with the elevation of the buildings. We have some issues with the environmental impact of the development. I'm all for housing, don't get me wrong. I know we need it. It's got to happen. But we would like to leave council and the mayor with this letter that we came up with some signatures as well from the people of Seafield Road.
Okay, great. We can append it to the agenda for tomorrow, so.
Okay, excellent. That would be excellent for tomorrow.
Yep.
And what time is that meeting at?
No, it's just, it gets appended, so we all have to read it tomorrow.
Okay, cool. Gotcha.
So you don't lose it, so.
Okay, so who can I hand this to?
Corporate officer.
Thank you very much.
Not
Thanks
a
for your
problem.
time,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you for taking the time. Okay, last call for public participation. Seeing none, I will move on to the consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent agenda. At this time, I call on anyone on council. You can have any one of these items removed and we'll put it on the regular agenda. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to remove item 6.3, please.
Okay. 6.3 will become 8.9. Okay, with the exception of item 6.3, can I get a mover and seconder to approve the amended consent agenda? Oh, what's that? Councillor Jordison.
Could I please pull 6.2?
Okay. That will become item 8.810.
Thank you.
May I get a mover and seconder now on the amended consent agenda? So we 8.1, 8, and 8.4 are on the consent agenda. Okay, thank you, Councillor Jordison and Councillor Olson. Any opposed? Seeing none, a motion carries. Okay, we'll get on to notice of motion. So the notice of motion, just for the public to know, is it's not to be motivated or debated until the next council meeting, which is on March 25th. And so what I'm going to do at this point in time, I'm just going to ask the sponsoring councillors to read their motions. So 7.1, Councillor Jensen, please, on the notification radius on developments.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. My motion reads that staff conduct a review of policy DEV 001, development application consultation, specifically the 75-meter notification to property owners of sites which are subject to a rezoning application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And 7.2, the Waste Management Compost Services Feasibility Study. Councillor Jordison.
The recommendation reads that council directs staff to conduct a feasibility study to explore the viability and benefits of offering waste management and compost services within property taxes to residents through a single contracted company, and that the feasibility study assess the potential environmental impact, cost savings, logistical considerations, and community benefits associated with consolidating waste management and compost services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jordison. So we're going to move on to new business. First item is audit planning report. Lenora Lee from KPMG, over to you.
Good evening. Thanks for having us at your meeting tonight. My name is Lenora Lee. I'm an audit partner with KPMG, and we're really excited to be working with you this year. I work with a number of local governments within the CRD, as well as a number of joint service agreements, joint entities, West Shore Parks and Rec, the libraries, Municipal Finance Authority, CRD. So really excited to be working with the city this year. I'll hand it over to my colleague to introduce herself.
Thank you, Lenora. I'm Ayomide Kalaliosafainti. I'm the engagement manager with KPMG. I also work on a couple of municipalities and other crown corporations. It is really good to work with you, and we've been working with management. The response has been positive, and yeah, we look forward to continuing that.
So we just wanted to touch on a few highlights from the audit planning report, which is on page 41 of your package tonight. What you'll note is that our first discussion is related to materiality, and materiality represents a level of precision we apply in performing the audit. When we go to conclude our audit, our determination is based on whether or not there are any material errors in the financial statements, and that determines whether or not we're able to issue a clean or a qualified audit report. For this year, we've assessed planning materiality at this stage at 1.37 million. That represents a small decrease from prior year. And the benchmark against which we apply materiality is generally total revenue or total budgeted revenue. A large part of the revenue here is related to donor developer contributed assets, which are non-cash, but do tend to fluctuate year over year just based on what types of developments are in progress. So with the budgeted revenue being slightly lower this year than the prior year, the materiality has decreased slightly as well. When it comes to actually performing our audit procedures, it won't necessarily have that significant of an impact. It is at the higher end of what the audit standards allow, which is generally a 0.5 to a 3% range. And where an organization falls on that range is often dependent on things such as the stability of the organization, any historical risks and evidence of adjustments that have taken place. And so with the city being a very stable organization, we're comfortable assessing that materiality at the higher end of the range. When it comes to performing individual audit procedures, if we do note any errors in the work that we perform, so for example, if the bank statement is different than the amount recorded in the financial statements, we apply an audit misstatement posting threshold, and that will be 68,500. If we identify an error greater than that amount, we would generally recommend to management to adjust the financial statements prior to them coming to you for review and acceptance. And they'll also be included in our audit findings report that we'll bring to you in May prior to review and acceptance of the financial statements. This next page here just provides some information around scoping. And so the City of Colwood financial statements are a consolidated set of statements, which means they include the operations of the city and also your proportionate share of your ownership in West Shore Parks and Recreation Centre. The visual here just indicates that the consolidated statements are mostly made up of the city, and as a result, we'll be applying most of our audit work related to the audit attached to the City of Colwood also. We will agree that the audited numbers of West Shore Parks and Rec are the same numbers that are applied to the Colwood financial statements as kind of a mathematical check. In terms of risk assessment, we spent some time during the planning stages assessing where we believe there could be risk of error in the financial statements, and that drives some of the scope and depth of our audit procedures. So in the work we've performed to date, we've identified primarily base or low risks with most of the transaction streams. Again, very strong internal control environment and very regular day-to-day operating transactions. Where we have identified a elevated or higher risk are those that have potentially some susceptibility to error, non-routine transactions, some estimation risk or judgment risk attached to them. The first item noted here, management override of controls, is required on every audit. So the audit standards require us to review things such as year-end journal entries, any potential entries around managing expenses to budget, and any other particularly unusual transactions that we may find in the course of our audit work. In terms of developer contributions and donated assets, we identify an elevated risk there, primarily because some of these transactions are non-cash related, they are large dollar value, and they're generally non-recurring. From what we've seen in management's work so far, there is a good process in place in terms of identifying and valuing these in the statements, but nonetheless, we will spend a bit more time in this area as part of the audit process. The last area I wanted to touch on briefly was around the significant risks and inquiries. As part of our audit process, we are required to request of those responsible for governance to communicate with us any potential or suspected instances of fraud that you're aware of, as well as any potential concerns that you have related to internal controls, and that does also feed into our audit approach. So either tonight or in our inquiries, and our contact information is included in this report. Please do reach out to us for further communication on that matter. The rest of the report, I'll just touch on very briefly. This is our first year as auditors in a number of years, and as a result, we are required to perform some transition procedures, primarily to ensure that the opening figures are reliable and that the numbers are the same as what has been audited in the past. So we've predominantly performed all of that work, and just with the completion of the final audit work, we'll do a final tie-in of those numbers. In terms of timing, in terms of what you can expect, we will be on site here at the end of March to perform the balance of our audit work. And prior to the acceptance of statements, as mentioned, we will bring forward to you a findings report, which will highlight to you the key areas of focus and the results of our audit procedures. So those are really the highlights of this planning report that I wanted to touch on with you. The purpose, again, is really just to give you an idea of what our audit approach looks like for this year, what our areas of focus will be, as well as to obtain any input and feedback from you. So happy to address any questions.
Thanks very much, Lenora. I'll open it up to council for any questions. Seeing none, thank you very much. It's great. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to 8.2. This is the proposed CRD or Regional Water Supply DCC. This was referred from our meeting from February 26, 2024 meeting. And we were just awaiting for all council members to had the opportunity to hear the CRD presentation on, which took place on Friday, March 1st, and to review the Huggett report. And I will call on Councillor Ward as was your motion to motivate. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did take the opportunity to view the presentation from the CRD, as I'm sure most did. I was pretty thoroughly aware of the plans prior to that, but thought I'd listen in. And I've read the Huggett report, and I've also reviewed the most recent Water Commission meeting, as well as the June 20th, 2022 Water Commission meeting, where the plan was advanced to the CRD board. Nothing really changed for me, to be honest with you. I think when I heard the Island Health representative speak, there was, a lot of, well, could, maybe be, not sure, potential exists for this, but timelines were very vague. So anyway, it didn't change my views on this. That certainly I concur that we will need filtration eventually. I think that's a given in this region, but the other questions still remain for me. Particularly concerns around the process. And I have submitted an amendment to the original motion that I think addresses those. Maybe Marcy, if you can bring that up. It's fairly wordy, shockingly. So I would say that one of the concerns from the last meeting was the second paragraph, Mr. Mayor, relating to requesting the CRD board to have an independent study of the assumptions on the program, which would require obviously bringing in another engineering firm. So I have proposed removing that request from this motion. So instead, what this motion seeks to do is to ask the CRD Water Commission or the CRD to engage with an unbiased third party to conduct an economic impact study of the proposed development cost charge. As we heard from the young gentleman back there, housing is an issue, and we are in a housing crisis. The CRD themselves acknowledge that, but yet there's been no economic impact study of what it would do to the housing market in the region by layering on such significant costs. And for those that aren't familiar, I mean, it's a DCC that's roughly a little more than 2/3 what we currently charge in total. So surely that has an economic impact. So we'd be asking the CRD for an economic impact study, and this is commensurate with what Central Saanich has also asked for. The change here is the next line, asking that the CRD honor the UNDRIP, basically the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, consulting meaningfully with local First Nations. I have it, it's on record with the Water Commission meeting that the Malahat First Nation has written a letter to the CRD board, CRD Water Commission as well, stating that they were not meaningfully consulted. In fact, they weren't consulted at all. In the June 20th, 2022 meeting, one of the commissioners asked that they delay it by 2 weeks to provide that consultation opportunity, and that was shut down to rush this through. Also, the Souk First Nation has expressed concern, and I know as well that the Beecher Bay First Nation has requested that the CRD consult with them. So we have 3 impacted First Nations in this region that have effectively been shut out of this plan, despite, in the wording of the Malahat First Nations, that this contradicts the UNDRIP, not only the spirit, but the letter of that rule. So we need to consult with them. And lastly, that we would ask that the CRD, when they do, and at this point, I would say it's pretty much a fait accompli, that when they do move forward on this, that they consider bulk water rate supports for agricultural land use and DCC waivers for true affordable rental housing. At the end of the day, that there is a housing crisis, and any extra dollar makes a difference on rental housing, as we know. So that's the amendment, removing the engineering study component and simply asking for what I believe is just the right amount of homework to make sure that this makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And I will move on to Councillor Jordison as a seconder for motivation, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to agree with the recommendations going forward. Also, just to touch on a few things here, especially the consultation with the First Nations. The letter from the CRD went out to 16 nations, and only one nation showed up to the consultation session that they had set up. So I think that that was a given that either they didn't get the information, the notice, or they weren't properly engaged. So I just think that that's really important that we go back and do that right. Um, and just the rest of it, I totally agree with. I just think we're in a housing crisis, and to be putting these DCC charges on developers at this point is it's just going to land on the purchaser, which is not helping the situation. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So we'll take that as a mover and the seconder, and I shall open the floor up for discussion, please. Councillor Day.
Thank you. And just looking for some clarity, because there was an amendment to the motion, but what we're seeing includes, I guess, the third bullet there about consultation. I believe that consultation is underway, and I'm just wondering, is that included now still in the motion?
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, through the chair. There has been no meaningful consultation as of this stage. There has been emails back and forth between the First Nations and the CRD. But the last formal communication from the Malahat First Nation to the CRD was expressing their concern that they had not been consulted, and they were the ones specifically who raised the UNDRIP issue and basically looking to kind of remind the CRD or their obligations there. So while the most recent meeting indicated that there would be some consultation, they said the same thing a year ago and it didn't happen. So at this stage, nothing has happened of any significance.
Okay, thank you. Just in my time as a CRD Water Commissioner a couple of terms ago, we had some pretty historic agreements that were made to include local First Nations utilization of the lands that surround our water reservoir for Indigenous cultural purposes. And I'm just I'm hopeful because I do think that the CRD had some pretty groundbreaking agreements with First Nations, that we would still continue down that path of appropriate consultation. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Councillor Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regard to the agricultural rates right now, the wholesale rate actually subsidizes the agricultural rate. I don't understand that would change in any way. The bulk water rate right now at 28 cents per cubic meter is already quite a bit higher than the agricultural rate of 21 cents per cubic meter. I understood also that with this plan, I wish I had a deeper understanding of it, but there's, there seemed to be context within the plan to deal with First Nations relationships and opportunities to contribute. This initial plan is a very high level, long-term overview, and as each element is approached, it seems to me that a great deal of work would then begin on that level. I just feel a little uncomfortable with that aspect of the motion, and likewise, I would speak to the first part there. Is the study, the economic impact study, the second bullet point. I'm not quite sure what we'd get from that. Water is a fundamental basis of any city, of any community, society, any modern development, and it typically would not be cheap. And as time goes, it becomes more expensive. And I think that we should be prepared for a future where we do not any longer get what is right now today, I believe, fairly inexpensive water. if that price climbs, it doubles, triples, quadruples, so be it, we need the water. So I'm not sure that how a plan would change just based upon what the impacts would be. We don't do the economic impact study when the price of 2x4s go up. Water's fundamental. I think it's got to be there. But so, thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I did watch that meeting and actually, I thought it was quite well done. I thought the presentations were very explanatory. And I mean, I have a difficult time sitting here and trying to wrap my head around a plant that might be needed in the late 2030s to 2040. It's very clear that this is a long-term plan and that we're in a good position for the coming decade or two. That's straight from the doctor in charge from VHA. I also took that that's significant engagement with local First Nations is coming. They spoke directly to that. And I would suspect, given the time frame, that there'll be multiple engagements at different levels along the way. So I don't think, you know, where an opportunity maybe has been missed up till now, I think that clearly it's coming. Further, the DCCs, my understanding from that meeting too is that one of the coming presentations is going to be on the DCCs and all the information around that. So I find it difficult to take a decision on the DCC information until I've heard that particular meeting and that what they're forecasting. And they made the point as well that, you know, the DCCs is absent any grant commitments and it's tough to figure out exactly where the right price point should be. And we don't know what kind of grants we're going to get in the future, but presumably this would be well supported by senior levels of government. So it's a little bit early in the process for me to take a knowledgeable position on this, despite all the information that's out there, which I did review. But the one thing I did learn that I take to heart is that this is very early stages, and I didn't get the impression that we crossed the point of no return by any stretch. And again, there's not even agreement on if this is needed and when it's needed. So it's really hard to sort of wrap your head around some of the finer details. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Councillor Olson because she hasn't spoken yet, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Ward and Councillor Jordison.
Thank you. And through the chair, Councillor Ward, I appreciate all of the reading and the work that you've put into this. I also had the opportunity to sit and listen to that CRD meeting. I've also attended them as the alternate water commissioner. And I do believe that we take water for granted. And we're very blessed to not require filtration at this point, but we are in the future. My understanding, we are going to need it. And my personal feeling is that I would prefer to protect our resource and to be proactive in the approach. I do believe that we are in the very, very early stages. I think stage 2 of 10 possibly, and that there's still a lot of work that has to be done. I do appreciate the work that has gone into it, but I won't be supporting this recommendation this evening.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to speak for the first time myself, Councillor Ward, and over to you. Sorry about that. So just so the public knows, these are the key points that I picked up. It was a webinar, so we couldn't ask direct questions to the water board at that meeting, just so that everyone realizes that. But I did follow up with questions directly to them. So, and I got answers back. So here's the dilemma. I absolutely support the first part of this motion, that an economic impact study should be done. I don't know. I think it's too early at this point in time for them to do, because they're just, it's a wag at this point in time. Wild ass guess, that is. And because what they stated at the meeting, which was an interesting comment, was that the charges that we saw when we saw our water bills going up 5 times the amount by 2038 or by 2040 when this is all implemented, what it didn't include, and they were very, very specific about this, was the DCCs in it. And what they stated at that meeting is that we would cut the cost by 30% if the DCCs were in fact implemented. So if you don't do DCCs, it has to come out of someplace. So does development pay for development, or do we all share in this cost? So that's a dilemma that we're looking at. So that's one issue that I want to make sure the public understands. The second thing that I want to make sure that everyone understands, the other part of what they're not accounting for is that they made an assumption, and their assumption was that there would be no senior government money in this. So no provincial funding, no federal funding. So I want to make sure that's clear out there. So, so what you're seeing right now presented is a worst case scenario. And we are really in early stages. So I just want to say, I do agree that we should be looking at this impact study, an economic impact study for, for the people. The second one about the CR with the Indigenous involvement in this, I think I've come to I'm being satisfied myself that they have this thing called the First Nations Relations Team right now, and they started on this embark now with. It seems kind of late to me that they started it now instead of back in 2022 when they approved the when they made the motion to approve to go forward with this. I thought that was sort of a strange timing. We do it after the fact, but in fact it's going to happen. And my understanding is that they are establishing MOUs to look after that whole part of it. So I don't know for asking for this, it's something they're already doing. In my eyes, I've come to that satisfaction. And the third issue, requesting the CRD consider a bulk rate. That's what I'm a little confused with, and maybe someone on the water board can explain this to me. But from what I understand right now, the rate that we give agriculture right now is an agricultural rate, which is actually $1.8 million, and it's funded by taxpayers. It's a rebate or a credit they get, and in fact, it is cheaper than the bulk rate. That's what I understand. That's what I was told. They sent me something in writing about that, so I wasn't too sure if we wanted bulk rates or we wanted them to. And from what I understand, this is actually looked at every year annually by the water board, and they approve what the rates are going forward. And they've kept this rate that they're doing right now. It's been in place since 2010, I believe it is. So that number has never changed. So that's where I was having a bit of problems with that third issue, is that, they're already doing this. And so I couldn't see the value in asking them to do something they're already doing. But the interesting one is the DCC waivers for affordable rental housing. I like that portion of it. We should be looking at that, potentially. Anyways, I just thought I'd make these comments right now and put things in context from my point of view. And I will open it up to Councillor Ward for second time. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and some great points raised. I think I don't disagree with you on a couple items. I can provide some explanation to them. I think, though, going back previously to what Councillor Grove said and Councillor Olson and Councillor Jansen, I think there's a misconception that this motion is about trying to pause this project or stop the project. I heard comments around, well, water is important and, water is life and so on. Those are great. I don't think you're going to find a disagreement for me. Water is important. And I said at the outset of this motion that we will most likely need water filtration at some point. That's not my argument here. So I think there's a misunderstanding. This motion isn't to go to CRD to say, hey, stop this, we don't need it. This motion is to simply put these items in a visible public place so that they can be accountable later, because they haven't been so far. So there's all this talk about what they're going to do, and we've heard them say it. Well, I heard them say a lot of things. I've gone back further. I've gone back to 2022, where they promised things like First Nations consultation and just dropped it, didn't do anything about it. And the only reason this has come forward and they've held these meetings and started to publicly address things is in response to some of the criticism they've received publicly and from other areas. So they weren't talking about it. We saw them come before this council on their traveling roadshow, where they went to every other council, requesting in advance that we submit any questions or concerns directly to them, not in public. And they just provided a quick little PowerPoint to say, this is what we're doing. And off they went. And then a few people in this region raised their hands and said, hey, there's a problem here. Like, there should be more than this. So it's all well and good that they say they'll do it now, but thus far, they haven't put their money where their mouth is. So in terms of this being the worst case scenario, I disagree respectfully. I think if you look at the history of projects in the CRD, infrastructure projects in the CRD go over budget anywhere from 45% to 85% historically. There has never been an under budget project of this magnitude from the CRD. And this is the most expensive potential project in their history. So I would wager that the 2 billion estimate right now could certainly go higher than that, you know, when we're talking 10, 15 years out from now. In terms of the bulk water rate supports, that should actually be worded to talk about the future state, because we are talking about a 500% increase in the cost of water to everybody across this region. So there is going to be an increase. Rates will have to change. So percentages we'll need to look at. And I think the spirit of the motion, which came from Central Saanich, which has, you know, obviously significant interest in the agricultural side of things, was that they make sure that water is going to be affordable in future after we, you know, put out well over $1 billion here. So I would note that on the First Nations piece, again, I mean, I'll believe it when I see it. The letter from the Malahat First Nations was dated February 15th. I mean, that's not last year. That's not 6 months ago. You know, that's a matter of weeks ago, where they, Gordon Harry, the chief of the Malahat Nation, I have the letter in front of me, you know, was seeking more fulsome engagement and specifically mentioned the United Nations Declaration. And, you know, had some real serious concerns about it. So again, they've said they're going to do things. What this motion seeks to do is just get accountability, right? It's asking for them to do the economic impact study. And on that, Councillor Grove, I know you said, well, what does it do? Well, an economic impact study tells us what is going to happen. What's the cost of this? Like, this isn't one small minor DCC we're layering on, you know, like our Parks DC or something else. This is the equivalent of almost every single other DCC that we levy as a municipality. What it could potentially do is eliminate our ability to seek other revenue sources in future and revenue sources from other municipalities. It could essentially tap out the revenue sources for our communities to build much needed infrastructure. What it can also do is have that trickle down effect where, like any business, it gets passed on to the consumer. And so, you know, when you're looking at an additional $9,000 or so in a home, that's going to go to the home buyer. And when we're talking the difference between, you know, a $10,000 difference is a down payment difference or not, between 50, 60K, whatever it might be to get into the market. This is something relative that we should consider. So I know I'm going on a little bit here. I recognize the way the winds are blowing. You know, I wasn't born yesterday. I'm fine with it. I've said my piece publicly and I'll say my piece here, but I stand up for taxpayers. That's what I ran for this job for. And, you know, I really, truly believe that, that if we don't hold the CRD accountable, who will? If the politicians can't stand up to them, nobody else is going to spend the time to dig into this stuff. So again, this isn't saying we don't need filtration. I want it if we need it, but I want to make sure that we say, hey guys, just dot your I's and cross your T's before you spend $2 billion of our money. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's important to note too that the Dr. Banuzik with Island Health, he the narrative has just been so changed all over wherever you read it. He has stated that filtration is not necessary at this point. It's not necessary. It's not going to be necessary unless they include the Leach River water. So until that happens, which is based on population, and population has shown that the demand for water has actually decreased and not increased like the original report says. So it just feels like the sky is falling, and or they want you to believe the sky is falling and it's not. And personally, with having with not even knowing what filtration system they're even going to come up with at the end, to be landing these charges as DCCs at this point is kind of not it's not, I hate using this word, but it's not really fair. And you know, I think it's important to note that in Canada, the responsibility for water is managed and shared by the provincial government, the federal government, and the municipal governments, and sometimes by territories and Aboriginal governments under self-government agreements. And you know, I think they owe it to the region to go to the provincial government, the federal government, and ask for support in this. And I don't think we've ever had to, because our water is so great. But you know, everybody shares a responsibility in this, and it shouldn't just land all on us. Um, and I guess the First Nations part, I just want to say, if they've done the consultation, they think they have. I know they haven't. Then they can check the box. But it's you know, we need to bring this forward and make it known to them, because I think that's what my job here at this table is to ensure that these things are done and done correctly. And you know, 16 nations were notified, one showed up. That's not consultation. So I don't think there's any harm in requesting it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just want to, because I'm the one with all the history here, it is really important to get it right. And I really applauded, actually championed the idea of this before the CRD ever got to looking at it, because when we raised the dam and increased the infrastructure for water, that all happened on the backs of ratepayers. Every single one of us who's using water paid through our water rates for all of the infrastructure that was done. And I saw a number of developments coming through with large infrastructure that was being added to that system, receiving credits for it. And I think it's really important that as development takes place and they pay for roads and they pay for sidewalks, that they also assist with creating the water line. So I think it is an important balance to maintain. And the thing that I don't want to see disappear from this motion is that this unbiased third party would look at the key assumptions and core items being proposed. This is all to have us working together to create the best possible system at the best possible price. And we could argue about when is the right time to check those assumptions, but I say when we're looking at spending money, is the right time to look at what your assumptions are and be sure that it's correct. Because we don't want to stow money away, take it from people who need it either for housing or for to put food on the table. Because let's face it, it's not just young people who struggle with the cost of living. It's also older people who are trying to stay in their homes. So I think there is something important here. And I would like to see that we bring it forward to ensure that we are doing the right thing at the right time for the future of the region.
Thank you very much. Well, I guess I'll just wrap it up with my second turn around. Again, I want to stress something. I've heard that these numbers bandied around. 500% increase. Remember, 500% increase is if we don't have DCCs and we don't have provincial or federal government grants. That is the worst case scenario. I want to make sure that everyone understands this. And this is what was troubling me, is if we don't have these DCCs, so if I assume their number is correct, if we have these DCCs, we'll see a 30% reduction in costs to homeowners today. Okay, that's what they clearly stated. So I think about this and I says, well, if we don't, then all of us taxpayers are on the hook. You know, the money that you're not collecting from DCCs has to come from somewhere, and it's existing taxpayers. So you will see I don't disagree, you will see a 500% increase in your rates. The DCCs are trying to offset it. Hopefully, again, this is my understanding, is they're trying to look at programs, because there is no program right now that they can, the grant money that they can get from either the federal or the provincial government to help pay for this infrastructure improvement or addition. There isn't right now today. But if that does happen, there could be further reductions. So that is a worst case scenario. So what I'm putting it out to the taxpayers, yeah, I'm trying to be fiscally responsible because I don't think, this is my own opinion, I don't think that we should all share in this when it's basically, we're doing this extension, we're going into the Leech River because we are getting more people. So growth pays for growth. So that's my philosophy in this. I see that having the DCCs applied is a 30% reduction automatically to existing homeowners. So that's how I see it. So that's why I'm okay with all this except for that part of it, but that's not what's being debated tonight, as Councillor Ward stated tonight. The one thing is to look at the economic impact, and what I'd like to see even be more specific with that comment actually is to have them look at it and give us the different scenarios. The worst case scenario, the best case scenario, and the most likely case scenario. That's what I would like to see, because then we have options and we can look at it. And again, like I said, I don't know if we're just telling them to do what they're already doing as far as, because they have that First Nations Relations Committee that is trying to settle this out. We can do it. It's no skin off my back, I guess, but I just think what's the purpose in it? And like I said, the third thing, they're already doing this. They're considering the bulk rates right now, but the DCC waivers for affordable rental housing is something that we should look at. I do agree with that. Anyways, that's how I want to summarize it. And, I'd like to come back and make an amendment to the motion if no one else wants to, but I do. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be brief, but in essence, I mean, we have a seat at the CRD table, and that's our mayor. And I think we've had a very fulsome discussion here. And I think we've raised enough points, I think all of us in our own way, that I'm quite sure that our voice will be taken forward by the mayor to the CRD to bring some of this up, or certainly challenge some of what's coming forward. And I have faith in that process. Do I have complete faith in the CRD? Well, I was out at the dump a couple of weeks back, and beside me pulled up the truck that had all the solid waste, the pellets that came from the last plant they built down in Esquimalt, which was supposed to be miraculously dealt with otherwise rather than dumping. So I don't have complete faith in them to deliver a fulsome project of this nature, because they're still working on the last one. But I do believe we're too early in the game here to really, in this process, to really, for me to entertain some of this stuff. And I feel that we'll be well represented by the mayor at the CRD. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion, an amendment to the recommendation. And on the first part, I would just like to add on the end to look at the worst case, best case, and most likely case. Number one. Number two, my amendment would be, I know that not everyone around the table is convinced that we will have the First Nations involved, but I do know that they have that First Nations relations team just to look after this right now. So I don't think it's required, so I'd like that eliminated. And for the third part of the motion, I know that the bulk rate is considered every year, and it's by in fact, our water board, and Councillor Jordison is a member. And it's that latter part, the DC waivers for affordable rental housing, is absolutely in play here to me. So I'd like to make those amendments. So delete the first part of it and just leave, and for the city of Colwood request, DCC waivers for affordable rental housing. I can live with that. Okay, thank you. Councillor Day seconds. And so I'll open the discussion on the amendment. Does someone need to retype this up on screen? Does everyone understand what I'm asking? Okay. Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm okay with your proposed amendments. However, I really would prefer that the First Nations part stays in there just because I think it's our responsibility to advocate for these groups as well. And whether they're doing it or not, we're only just, there's no harm in just requesting it be done. If it's being done, it's being done. It's a check. They're done. But I think it's important that it comes from the city for, the people that it pertains to. That's just my take on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Marcy, it should be worst case, best case, and most likely. Yeah. Yeah. My seconder is okay with that? Right, okay, thank you. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't object to the change of wording in paragraph 1. I would assume that they would have hopefully come up with that anyway, but being more specific isn't a bad thing. And I have no real issue with the last paragraph, reducing that to the DCC waivers, but I tend to align with Councillor Jordison's perspective that on the First Nations issue, well, if they're doing it, it's just a check mark. If it becomes just a ceremonial ask that you should consult with First Nations, so be it, right? I mean, is there a harm in saying, we are aware that First Nations haven't been consulted. We know they've expressed open concern that they weren't. So we just want to make sure that you are. And hey, if you are, cool. I mean, as Councillor Jansen said, you'll be at that table. You can ask that question. I just don't see a negative in incorporating it in there. But, like I say, no issue on the changes to the other two.
I'm reconsidering this. I don't have an issue with either Councillor Jordison or you've said. I guess it's not going to hurt it, I guess, to me, in the end. So you know what? Friendly amendment. Friendly amendment, I'm okay with. So, Councillor Day, how do you feel about this? Oops, sorry.
I'd just like to suggest that we put it in more positive language, that the CRD confirm their consultation with local First Nations.
Like that. Maybe that's why I was having problems with it before. I like that myself. So a friendly amendment. So you're okay with the second on the friendly amendment? Open the floor. Again, it's still open on, it's just a friendly amendment at this point. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? Okay, Councillor Olson opposes. And to the original motion, as amended, all those in favor? As amended. Okay, and those opposed? Okay, Councillor Olson and Councillor Jensen. Okay, we'll move on. 8.3, rezoning 2346 Soup Road, proposed amendment to rezoning conditions. Desiree.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This next item in your agenda is a recommendation from the Planning and Land Use Committee with respect to rezoning of 2346 Souk Road. So the item was first presented to the committee on February 5th, and the committee recommendation was forwarded to council on February 26th, but it was referred back to staff as a result of concerns that were raised by the applicant regarding identifying a fixed term as a purpose-built rental building. Staff have since met with the applicant and they have confirmed that they are amenable to the committee's recommendation as it was written. And they will be bringing forward on March 25th the fixed term that they've identified for a purpose-built rental, so it is forthcoming. And tonight, the purpose of this item on the agenda is just to seek council's endorsement of the planning and land use recommendation from February 5th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ward, I'll get you to make the motion and motivate if you wish.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to do that as chair of the Land Use and Planning Committee. I felt that their original decision was the right one. I'm glad that we've been able to work that out. So I would make the motion to accept the recommendation and move forward on it.
Councillor Jensen, as the vice chair, you second. Perfect. To open it up for discussion. Councillor Day.
I think there are a number of important innovations that are included in the recommendation, including ways to ensure compliance for nuisance materials on the public roadways. And I think this is moving us towards hopefully a way of doing new construction in Colwood in a way that doesn't negatively impact the neighborhoods that it happens in. So I really appreciate the efforts that they've made, as well as the inclusion of the concerns for the environmental impacts in the area. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other discussion, no other hands, I'll call the question. Mayor, all those in favor? Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Motion carries. 8.4, grant and aid 2024. Kathy, you're on.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a familiar topic. I'm back this year just to review the grant and aid process because last year was a newly elected council and there was some discussion around how the process worked and it was intended that it be referred to a finance committee, which never materialized. So I am bringing this report forward to get confirmation from council if you want to continue with the process the way it has been executed. We have received all of applications. They are ready to be circulated, but we want to take this opportunity to confirm that is the intent of council. And if there are another direction that you would like us to pursue prior to circulation of that information. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks so much, Kathy. I shall open it to the floor. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just want to say that we've been doing this in this way for a long time. It's kind of evolved over the years, and I think it's important that we keep it local and that we consider all of the important services that are offered close to home because it's sort of not a given. There are many times in the past 20 years that I've been serving here where programs that are available in other parts of Greater Victoria may not be accessible or available to people in Colwood, and certainly not in the same ways. That's been true for many things, and many of the organizations that do provide services do so because they believe in what they do, and they have lots of volunteers. And if we were to go down the road of not providing grants year over year, I think that we would have a lot less services available to our public. So I just want to, I know it's hard, it's a lot of work, and knowing what's available in our community can be difficult, and there can be areas that, you know, we're not as familiar with, but I think it's very important that we do this work so that we understand what is and what isn't available, and keep it top of mind that providing services to our community is what we're really here for. And it can be very easy to think that it would be more efficient to simply not go through this process and not provide grants. But without them, a lot of things would not exist that really make a huge difference in people's lives. So I hope we can continue.
Thanks very much. Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm looking at this and I see the resolution from February 13th, 2023. And although a finance committee wasn't stood up, I guess I just wish that this motion had been flagged either by staff or the council members that brought it forward, instead of doing this at the 11th hour. Like, this is the time to be looking at the grants, not deciding whether we're going to write a policy or find a way forward, or send it off to someone else to look after. This should have been done before now. So I think from my perspective, the eligibility criteria established, that is established, or that we have established in the current policy, I think we need to have that somehow in the spreadsheet that we go through with tick boxes to evaluate the criteria to some degree. I don't know. But I think that in light of this, this has come forward again, and it's like we don't have another way forward. I think that maybe we could look at, maybe another motion needs to be looked at for staff or council to work on a policy that we are more, I don't know, happier with, or something that just works better in considering these. And I definitely agree to keep it local. So yeah, that's all I really have to say right now. I guess I just wish that we had done something before now. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, and through the chair. So I also agree that nobody knows our community like we do as staff and council. And I'd like to see the grant and aid remain with under the city's management. A couple of things, I did go through everything here, and so bear with me. So as far as the adjudication process using the weighted average, I think personally that works well for me. Perhaps it might need some fine tuning for the future, but it seems like a fairly straightforward process for us. I understand that there is time, 30 hours plus of staff time going through all of the paperwork after. And I don't know if I have a motion here, and perhaps I do, but some considerations that I would like to see moving forward, and maybe not for right now, but for in November for the following year, to look at setting a maximum grant limit of $5,000 to ensure that resources are distributed efficiently across multiple organizations. I think applicants should have equal opportunity to receive financial report, and I think that this might help. Also, what we do know through the report is that the grant and aid is not meant to be treated as perpetual funding. So, and as such, I would be in support of potentially restricting applications to project-related requests as opposed to programs, and limiting the frequency for which an organization can apply for a grant and aid. And I know that was something that was also potentially recommended, but I think, and maybe that is a motion that I would like to make. I don't know if I do that now, but yeah, so I guess
I'll come back to you.
Okay,
How's
yeah.
that sound? Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd echo the comments from, I think the whole table thus far. Certainly agree that keeping it local is the way to go. My principal objection was going to be to involve the Victoria Foundation. I think they're too far removed, and I've seen a fairly recent example where they had oversight over funds that ended up at the Belfry Theater, but then migrated through to a group called the Plenty Collective, which then used it to pay protesters to protest Israel. So, you know, I don't want to see money that our taxpayers put in end up for any kind of random cause du jour out there in another part of the city. So I think we do the best job. We do the best we can in-house. There's room for improvement, as Councillor Olson has suggested. What that looks like, I don't know yet. I would think any significant proposal to revise the current process should have a deadline that would be prior to a November intake, whether it's in 2024, 2025, or whatever that date looks like. So I'll await what the motion looks like. But ultimately, the existing policy and process for this year is where I stand.
Great. Thank you. I actually agree with Councillor Ward on that. I don't want to change too late in the year to change the current methodology. And I also agree with Councillor Olson. There should be time limits on this, because that was always the intent of this. It wasn't supposed to be a perpetual thing, not unless it was a fee for service type of deal, right? So that's how I saw this. And it just seems like it's the same organizations coming back to the trough. So I'm just kind of scratching my head a little bit about that one. I thought about the Victoria Foundation. It's kind of a novel idea. It gets it out of our hand, and it's not really, you know, I also thought of another way of doing it is you just put is it a select committee? It's the one-timers that we do? If you put a select committee together of citizens and just let them decide how it's dispersed, I'd be okay with that too. So, you know, so I'm okay with that sort of idea. But at this point in time, it's kind of late in the season to be making any adjustments to what we have. The weighted average came in on the last council because we always tended to agree not to agree on anything, and it was always a bun fight. I remember that. So the weighted average was the way to go, and it just seemed to work the last 2 or 3 years now, and so I'm okay with that methodology. So this takes a little more thinking on my part, that's for sure, because I tumbled around with this today myself, trying to figure out, geez, I wonder how I really feel about this. Never ever, I didn't actually go out to the citizens to find out how they all felt, you know, and so I didn't have that opportunity. And so, so really, I think now that I know this is on the plate, I will you know, encourage everyone to engage with people, citizens, to find out what's the best way. But the old way of doing it, I can just tell you, was kind of incredible. We used to always come in here, and then every organization used to come and do a presentation, and the time, like, it wasn't just one council meeting, it rolled over into another council meeting. So just the money we spent doing that was worth probably more, with all the staff and everything, was worth more than what the entire grant program was worth. So that was just ridiculous to me. So anyways, that's how I feel, and I will go, whoa, all of a sudden my board lit up. Councillor Grove. Next time I won't say anything. Councillor Grove.
I'm nice, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree that it's late in the day, so we should not in the day, but in the season, that we should carry on. I'm happy to go with what we did last year, but I think that we've heard quite a few ideas coming in, which would be part of a process where we could perhaps adapt it a bit and improve it. Perhaps I would like to keep it local, as many others have stated, and I don't know what that motion is going to look like. Waiting to hear.
Thank you very much. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'm going to make a request that we not make motions here tonight, because, and my reasoning is really simple, that this item is on our agenda, but our ideas are not out there. And I would really like us to have an opportunity to consult with our community before we start letting the horses out of the barn, and make some real concerted effort to make whatever change it is that we make for the next funding cycle one that's widely supported and makes sense. That's my only suggestion, because normally how we've been doing things is we had a couple of notice of motions here tonight. It gives us a chance to kind of think about it and gather some input, rather than putting, at least for myself, I feel like I would be kind of on the spot here tonight. So I would just like a chance to come back with some real better thoughts about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Olson. Oops, keep your hand off it. Councillor Olson.
Thank you. Through the chair, that's a very valid statement. So I wasn't proposing that we were making changes for this grant and aid cycle. So I will save it because I do have some ideas and to put a notice of motion when we're through this first cycle for the end of this year. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thanks.
So would someone like to make the motion right now on what has been recommended? So it's either continue on or change it right now, basically. Councillor Day?
Thank you. I'll move that we continue the same process for this year and that we come back.
Seconder, please. Councillor Grove? Discussion on that motion? Oh, Councillor Ward.
I'd just like to propose an amendment, if I will. I'll just suggest it first that we accept, we do that, but that in that same motion that we suggest that any future changes must be submitted to council prior to next year's intake of November 2024. So we establish a timeline for ourselves and for staff to work towards that objective.
Okay.
Perfect.
Sounds great. A seconder on the amendment, or is it a friendly amendment? We go with a friendly amendment? Okay. Okay, we have an amendment, a seconder. Discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment? That's unanimous, motion carries. Go back to the original motion as amended. Any other discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much. That wasn't that painful. Okay, we shall move on to 8.5, 2024 event plan. Sandra, please. By the way, this presentation will be appended to your agendas tomorrow. It's not part of your package. She's got the report, but not the presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for this opportunity to run through our 2024 event plan tonight, specifically in consideration of locations for this year's events. The purpose of the report is considering a shift of events away from the Lagoon Beach to the beachlands and other city parks and other public spaces over the next 3 years. As you know, our events align with the Council's draft strategic plan and with our official community plan. We also have direction for this work through the service plan and through the financial plan. We have also heard support for events and engagement activities through our Ideas Fair and other events, engagement events. The intention of our community events is to engage the community and create free, inclusive, sort of everyone welcome opportunities to connect and relax and enjoy our community together. So over the last few years, as events have become increasingly popular and the city has advanced plans related to waterfront stewardship, new considerations have emerged with respect to events hosted at the Lagoon Beach on Ocean Boulevard, which of course runs along the Esquimalt Lagoon Migratory Bird Sanctuary. In previous years, events have focused on encouraging awareness and enjoyment of local parks and the waterfront, including weekly beach food events, and as one activity intended to support a vibrant waterfront. The waterfront stewardship plan includes 2 areas where food service is envisioned for visitors to the beach and users of the future waterfront walkway. One of them is shown here at what they call the riflery berm, where a new crossing will be, and a small area for food truck parking will be included in that vision there. In addition, near the Wave Plaza, which is where the lagoon washrooms currently are, another couple of spots are envisioned for food truck stalls. So those are the considerations we have into the future. I'll just do a really quick run through of some of the events we have planned this year. There are over 80 events planned in alignment with what we've done in previous years. Everything from the Ideas Fair to Easter and holiday events, volunteer appreciation, Earth Day events, Canada Day events, Indigenous Peoples Day, on June 21st, which we participated in last year as well, and staff are on the planning committee for that event. Halloween and holiday events, and of course our music in the park and Eats and Beats events, which happen each year. So I'll leave it there with the recommendation being that council directs staff to proceed with the coordination and implementation of 2024 planned events, transitioning events away from the lagoon beach to the beachlands and other city parks and public spaces over the next 3 years. And there are other options there for council to consider, and I'll leave those to you to consider now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Great presentation. Question from council. Councillor Ward.
In terms of the options that are there, Sandra, first of all, I think we saw, a great job in transitioning from some of the previous locations like Lagoon Beach to the beachlands for Eats and Beats. And then, that's easy to say on paper, but, to do that operationally is a big lift. So thank you. When I'm looking at the options that are here, option 3 seems very definitive, right? It's like, we're moving away from Lagoon Beach. That's it, nothing. And as much as I like to see things transition to beachlands, we know that's kind of the long-term goal. We also know that it's still very much a development site. There isn't really much there. So, and I don't know if it's fair to ask you this, but I'm wondering if your preference would be to do, as we've said, which is a gradual transition, option 2, because to me, that kind of stands out as the logical, operationally most effective and kind of just viable way to proceed.
Thank you for that question. Option 1, I think, is the one that speaks to transitioning over the next 3 years. And that's staff's preferred option. Give us some time to evolve away, not only us, but the partners we work with to put these events on to transition over time. And as you say, as the beachlands evolves and becomes a place that's welcoming to people.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. In retrospect, that was a really stupid question because I was looking at number 1 and I said number 2. So that's what I was looking to see if that's kind of the preferred approach, and you said it was. So thank you for that.
I just have 2 questions. This wording that you used in your report, and I didn't understand what it meant. And the first one is, you said augmenting Canada Day. So I didn't know what you meant by that. So can you be a little more definitive on what you mean by augmenting Canada Day?
Sure. Thank you for that question. Through service plan, I believe it was, we heard from council an interest in doing more on Canada Day and perhaps liaising with Port Red Hill or First Nations partners, other partners, to bring more emphasis to Canada Day in Colwood. And so that's where that recommendation came from.
Okay, thank you. I understand. So the second question I have is, I noticed, I looked at the calendar for the arts and culture Colwood, and they've got a bunch of things on their calendar which are not reflected in your events. You've got one only, and that's the that event that we have with Fort Ron Hill in September.
Right.
And so should the rest of them be included as events then too?
Absolutely. Over time, our plan is that more is better, and both these event drivers should go ahead. I don't have a definitive list from them yet. I haven't seen one yet, but I'd be happy to include it in our event plan. And certainly on our website, when we list all events, they all appear there.
Okay, that would make me happier.
For sure.
And the last question, or the last one, just a comment. Everyone note that we're getting the truck parade again this year. Okay, thanks. Councillor Jensen, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Sandra. This is great. I think we are, where are we at with the waterfront stewardship plan? I mean, I know that's not what this is about, but we are speaking about certain areas here that have been identified through that process for possible food trucks, what have you. Are we moving to a position where literally we'll move all events to somewhere else in the community and maybe some smaller scope stuff down there still, or which way are we headed?
Thank you for that question. I guess that's why we're here tonight, to seek direction on that from council. As I mentioned, the waterfront stewardship plan does envision several places where food vendors could be located. That was the idea from the outset. And so a small activation could happen around that. I don't think we would see something of the level of Eats and Beats again at the Lagoon Beach. but that determination can be made, I think, from this group about how we go forward.
Thank you. I mean, I'm pleased to see that they do recognize it, or the plan does recognize that there are areas for gathering, and certainly there's potential for something small scale there in the future. But I would agree that if we're shifting larger events elsewhere, it's probably the preference in my mind. Thank you.
Maybe this is a good time just to mention that my colleague Brittany will be up speaking about other special events, community-driven ones, and that may speak to that issue as well. So bring that up then too.
Okay, can I get a motion on the floor, please? Go ahead, Councillor Grove.
With the first option.
Okay, get a seconder on that. Okay, Councillor Jensen. Discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? It's unanimous. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Sandra. I guess you're staying up there. Supporting Brittany. That's great. And this presentation that Brittany's given us will be appended to the agenda also tomorrow.
Here we go. Okay, thank you. So yes, following up from Sandra's presentation, I'm here to talk about our special event and filming permits. Just a quick few slides to go through. The city encourages events and filming at various locations throughout the city. So we just want to reaffirm, and that's what we're here for tonight. So as Sandra mentioned, the draft strategic plan identifies pathways to enhance engagement and well-being, as well as several several tactics related to special events in the OCP as well. So this is just a slide you've seen before from the Ideas Fair back in 2023, where a few common themes included supporting social connection with events, activities, recreation, arts, culture, and that carries over into our seniors and youth category that we discussed, where there was reference to music in the park, markets, amphitheaters, places to connect, play, gather, and celebrate. So the special event process was managed by the engineering team and then shifted to the communications team back in 2022. And this shift allowed the communications team an opportunity to better promote and collaborate with these event planners. The communications team has established a partnership with West Shore Parks and Recreation, and they assist us in booking commercial groups, such as fitness classes at 4 parks, which include Colwood Creek, Meadow Park, Herm Williams, and Ocean View. These applications are still reviewed internally, so staff still gets eyes on them. What type of events? So most common events that we have are birthday parties at our smaller parks. We have elementary school beach days down at the Lagoon Beach. We have a number of beach cleanups throughout the year quite often, a few markets, and then often small wedding ceremonies as well. In 2023, we had 51 special events processed, and we had 8 filming permits processed. So far this year, we've already had 18 special event applications submitted. We've had a couple bottle drives, another wedding ceremony, along with the Western Canadian Beach Sprint Championships, which you'll see on the bottom left there. They are returning again for their 3rd year, I believe, as well as Tour de Victoria, which will be coming through Colwood once again. Oh, and sorry, there was also a Hallmark movie called The Curious Caterer, filmed back in February for 2 weeks. And then just 2 options before you to consider. The first one, that staff continues to support community events and filming in the city, and that staff work with the Environmental Committee and the Parks and Recreation Committee to refine the process and transition away from the Lagoon Beach over the next 3 years, similar to the second recommendation that was in Sandra's report. Or that staff proceed with coordination and implementation of 2024 events in city parks and public spaces, including the Lagoon Beach. I'll leave that up for you to review, and happy to take any questions.
The floor for Questions, Councillor Day?
Thank you. So the one thing that I have been aware of for some time, I mean, there's been questions raised over the years about whether or not filming of whether it's Hallmark movies or other things actually benefits the location that it's done in, meaning Colwood. And for various reasons, I think we have agreed that it's a good artistic industry that provides employment, and Colwoodians have equal opportunity in accessing that industry. But what we've also seen is, especially at the lagoon, commercials being filmed at the lagoon, and I'm not sure that they're paying us anything or even getting a permit to do so. I know there was a Volvo commercial, there was a moving company commercial that was also filmed at Esquimalt Lagoon. And I would like to see us ensure that something comes back to the city to support these beautiful parks that we spend a lot of money trying to maintain and look after. When those kind of commercial things come forward, and just wondering, is this the right place to ask that that happens? And is there something that could come forward at a future date? I don't want to put you on the spot to come up with something on the fly, but it's something I just want to flag as something that I think probably we would like to understand and maybe give some policy direction on.
Thank you for the question, and that definitely something that staff could come back with. If you have other things to say. I will say in the past year or two, we haven't had any commercials coming forward to us. And the process is that anyone filming in the city of Colwood does have to have a Colwood business license, which will allow them to film. So that is the funds that we take in. But we can definitely assess and come back with something for commercials in the lagoon space.
Yeah, I think I just, maybe other areas are going to become more popular in the future too. I mean, Colwood Creek Park is looking pretty fabulous these days. I mean, I don't have any doubt that there's many beautiful areas in Colwood that people would like to film in. I just would like to make sure that it brings something back to the community that provided the space.
Yeah, thank you. And I will just add, we are in discussion and communication constantly with the Vancouver Island Film Commission, so we can kind of take from there, from the other communities on the West Shore, especially with their processes and what sort of charges they have, and add those to our processes.
Thank you.
Fair enough. Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you. I did notice as well that there's no fee other than the business license for the filming, and that I dare say I believe that's unusual. And I know some neighboring jurisdictions, particularly closer to town, have a significant fee and also a demand that you hire some staff members, as in local police officers, and that help direct traffic, and that's mandatory. And there's no quibbling about that when they come to film in town. I would suggest along the same lines as Councillor Day that if we were to charge a nominal fee and put that towards the events budget or what have you, I don't think that's too much to ask, and I bet there would be no pushback whatsoever from the industry. That's a statement. I'm sorry, Brittany. Everything else looks great in here. I was just surprised that we didn't charge a little something for the filming. Oh, the only thing I would say about your motion, I read there, is the intention, like it seems to me a bit of a stretch if we're gonna move filming away from the beach areas, if that's where they want to film. And yet it feels like that's what we're trying to do from the motion. Can you just clarify that?
For sure, yes. Thank you for that. And that maybe we would be better off to split that to discuss special events taking place at the Lagoon Beach versus filming, if we want to define what types of events can take place down at the beach. I will say they're quite often on a smaller scale with the exception of a few. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll yield, and maybe you and the mayor can figure out how to parse that out, and or even if it's just taken as direction, or if Sandra wants to offer some input, or the chief administrator. I see him reaching.
Your worship, if I may, please, Mr. Earl. Thank you. The specific wording in the motion is that we work with the Environment Committee and the Parks and Rec Committee to refine the process and consider options. And so we're not going in with the perspective that we definitively move away with all events and filming at the lagoon, but we consider it, and perhaps some events move away and some events stay.
Thank you. So no amendment necessary is what I'm hearing. Thank you.
Okay, I just have one question myself then. So I guess in the past, we've had a couple controversial events. So right now it's written here that communications, you call the shot, but I'd like to escalate that if it is controversial, that at least the CEO makes the decision on. I need some accountability from you, Mr. Earl, on this one. So I'd like to see, he may confer with me or not. I'm not going to demand that right now, but I think that that has to be there. It's probably your default anyways, but I just want to make sure that's clear here in public that those type of events are, there's some conferencing going on.
Thank you. Maybe I can make the suggestion that as we come back from our review with the Environment Committee and Parks Recreation Committee, that is included as something that council considers in that process.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Seeing no other comments, or I will ask for someone to make a motion on the options. Which option? Councillor Jensen, go ahead. Number one. Okay. A seconder on that one, Councillor Grove. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay. It's unanimous, motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you. Great job. 8.7 Youth Engagement Update and Downton. I'm looking forward to this one. And for council, again, this presentation will be appended to your agendas tomorrow.
That's right. And you do have the briefing in your agenda package. And I would like to take you through a PowerPoint this evening to show some of our initial findings and preliminary work that's happened around engaging youth in our community.
I'm going to have to get you to speak closer to the mic.
Is that better? So the work to improve youth engagement in Colwood is rooted in policy and of course in input from community. And that's through your ideas fair from last year, the citizen survey, and the household prosperity survey. And what you can see up there highlighted in blue is that 44% of residents believe that youth health and success is being adequately supported. And that's important for me. It means we have some work to do. Third time that you've seen this tonight, your graphic from your ideas fair, but up in the top right, you can see what's directly related to what youth are asking. And that is more programming, more activities, spaces that are just designed for youth in that age group. And then also that the services, resources that we provide are accessible. And I would also add that they're barrier free, and I will address that a little bit later in the slideshow. So Colwood was selected by Public Safety Canada to receive funding to support youth with the goal of preventing gun and gang violence. So the city contracted the Village Initiative and Thrive to create a strategic plan, and began implementing that strategy through our collaboration with West Shore Park and Rec Safe Spaces, with local service providers and through engagement with youth in our community. Further to that, we're working with school staff, and in particular with staff who support youth who do not attend school regularly. And in that, we're finding where gaps exist in services and resources in our community. So what's driving the work that we're doing right now is using data that already exists. And we hear service providers telling us what their capacities and capabilities are. We're talking to youth, asking them what they need and what they want. The graphic here at the bottom is from the middle years development index. So it's from the SD2 school district and students in grades 6, 7, and 8. surveyed saying that 20% felt low connection with their peer group. And that's an important stat for me again, because youth who don't feel connected to their peer group, I think are vulnerable at being exploited and recruited. Here we have some trends that was put out by the McCreary Center Society, showing a decline in several things, including how much sleep youth are getting, attendance, access to services, how they rate their overall health, and some possible indicators there around food insecurity. So this data is really important because it helps us ask very specific questions about what youth need, what they want, and how we can match that with what's existing in the community or where their gaps are. I began meeting with youth both in schools and outside of schools. This is activities that took place inside of schools. You'll see on the left there was with a group of 25 youth at John Stubbs. And the two on the right are from a group of 50 students at Royal Bay. I wanted to get a sense of how they interact with our community, how they feel about our community. So I asked them to put stickers on these maps showing where they feel safe, where they have strong connections with adults, where they don't feel safe and why, what they think they're missing from the community. And then if we could wave our magic wand and be the planners and the builders and the developers, where would we put that thing that's missing? And we talked about why. And of course, the goal is to continue to do this throughout the length of the project. Something you're going to hear more about in the coming weeks and months is around Youth Week. So this is a provincial initiative that runs the first week of May. The goal is to plan activities and events that help create a positive, strong connection between youth and community, which is a strong indicator for youth health and wellness. In the appendix of your briefing is just a screenshot of the survey that we've created that's currently open for feedback. And based on the feedback we get from youth, we will try to create some events that they want to participate in. And once we have an event schedule, of course, you'll be able to see that. We're also working on creating opportunities for you folks to engage with youth during that week. And that might include a celebration station where we offer some food, where I've learned is the biggest currency for youth, food or some swag. We're also working on a dodgeball game with our very own firefighters in the high school. And that's an event that happened pre-COVID. So they're excited to get back in there. So if any of you are diehard dodgeballers, let me know. And then of course, when we have those events solidified, you will receive information about that. Okay, so we know that youth want to say in the community that they're inheriting. So one of the next steps is to recruit some youth who can provide some regular feedback to us about how we shape the services that we're providing, shape the resources, shape the direction of our community. We also know that youth want to be recognized for their contributions. And overwhelmingly, we hear youth feel like they're being stereotyped, that things that are happening in the media are portrayal of the minority. So the photograph you see here was an initiative that the city of Nanaimo ran, where they asked youth to contribute photos of places they feel safe, places they don't feel safe, had some small awards and prizes for youth. And so we're looking at opportunities to do something similar, because we know that youth don't always want to be involved in recreation, which I'll talk about a little bit more. So with this graphic, you see the outside of the circle captures the work that the city has contracted Wisher Park and Rec to do with their Safe Spaces programming. And the next two slides I have go into more detail about those programs. And the inside is where we've identified where there are some gaps for our youth in our community that are vulnerable or at risk. And so just as an example, we met with the staff who run the COPE and CRED program with Pacific Center Families, talked about how we could bolster some of the existing programs, maybe where there's room for some outreach, and sort of taking that model, working with other service providers to ask those similar questions, helping sort of break down some silos and find ways that we can fill in the gaps and build a better safety net. So here's the drop-in programs through West Shore Park and Rec. You can see some are new, some are existing programs. And the existing programs have been or will be sort of bolstered with grant enhancements. The photos you see at the bottom are from a drop-in program last week. So this is at Centennial Center. They call it Arts and Movement, and it runs every week. I apologize for the busyness of this slide. This is some other programs, initiatives, education seminars. They're also in collaboration with West Shore Park and Rec and some partners. And the photos on the bottom, you're probably familiar with that gorgeous indoor sports complex at West Shore Park and Rec. So this was from Friday night. There's of course a $2 swim, free drop-in at the indoor sports arena, and then some food, and the youth room is open. The photos on the right are from a program called Chefs on the Shore. If you're not familiar with that, it's youth, this particular cohort for 5 weeks, some youth that have been identified by Thrive, who are in homes where there's some food insecurity issues. And those youth come Friday night. They are with a chef who prepares, the youth prepare 2 to 3 meals while they're there. They eat as a cohort, talk about nutrition, talk about food. And then at the end of the night, they go home with the ingredients and the recipes in order to prepare food with their families. And so that's a program that we're really excited about and will continue to run. And the exciting piece too is that West Shore Park and Rec is working with the families who are eligible for the LIFE program. So that's families that, according to Stats Canada, are on or below their poverty threshold, or sorry, not poverty, low income threshold. And so connecting with those families to see if the youth in those homes would probably get priority. So common theme, this is no surprise, is service providers in the West Shore are desperate for space and accessible space and affordable space. So we feel like there's an opportunity for us to help identify some public spaces that might be able to be used. And as West Shore Park and Rec talks about, they have a lot of space in their non-prime times, but if you're looking to run a program from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, it's difficult. So we're hoping we can be a bit of a bridge and help facilitate some of this. We've also heard from youth that they don't always know what services are available in our community. And so we've heard very loud and clear that what they want is posters, and they want posters with big QR codes on them, right? So they can just take a snapshot of it and then look into it later. So I just included an example there that on the far right, that's Island Health's new sexual health inventory. It's called ISH for short. But we also know that families, caregivers, sometimes even educators don't know of all the services available as well. So we think it's equally important to get that information out, through both avenues. Hearing from vulnerable youth that may not be connected to family, that may not be attending school regularly, they're looking for skills that make them employable. Things like food safe, maybe knife skills, barista, first aid. And we're hearing if those youth aren't provided with those skills, they're going to find money in maybe less desirable, less socially appropriate ways, right, that contribute to our community in meaningful ways. So there's a desperate need for us to connect with youth and help get some of these skills. There's also opportunity for mentorship just in the grand diversity that exists in this building around parks, firefighters. We have great relationships with police, incredible staff over at West Shore Park and Rec, so that there might be opportunity to do some mentoring and volunteering and skill building. And my last slide here is just around some of the common barriers that youth are experiencing. And something as seemingly simple as asking youth to register for a program can be enough for them to not participate. And I know you folks know this, might be the cost of transportation. It may also not have access to transportation. So as we're looking at bolstering services, doing outreach, yeah, creating new programs. We need to keep this in the forefront of our mind.
Thank you very much, Anne. I'm just going to open it up for questions. Questions related to the presentation. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Worship. This is exciting stuff. Thank you so much. And as the representative for this community at West Shore Parks and Rec, we are profoundly excited about this at the board level. I mean, I know we're forging ahead, and there's some new ground that's been presented, and I know that Grant at West Shore Parks and Rec has been navigating some of the challenges, but at the board level, we are more than pleased to work with our community and you specifically to help deliver some of these services that clearly there's a need for. Obviously, there's a need, but there's also I think we were quite surprised at some of the uptake as well, as far as some of the drop-ins and such innovative ideas. Like I need to see this chef on the shore in action. It sounds exciting and making me hungry. No, just kidding. So, and I do encourage you, if you do run into any barriers, keep us posted, keep me posted. I can bring stuff to the board at West Shore Parks and Rec, but I know Grant is hugely in favor of this, and this is a new area. And just for the rest of the council table, it gets right to the heart of what is Parks and Rec for our community and the region, and how do we define that as a board, and do we need to be rethinking that? It's not just basketball. It's a whole hacky sack of things, and if there is a need for it and people are asking for it, then should we as a board and as a facility entertain the idea? And the answer, I think unequivocally from this current board, is yes. Might there be some limits on that at some point as far as logistics and staffing and what have you? Yes. But I think as we feel our way through this over the next couple of years, for the life of the grant, I think we'll achieve an equilibrium, and it's exciting. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Councillor Olson.
Thank you through the chair. This is great. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. I do have a question. One was you were in speaking to the posters. Has there been conversation with the school district to see if those can be distributed in the schools, like in the hallways and the bathrooms, that sort of thing? I'm not sure what the process is there, but that would be a great way to start to get the information out. And just another thing to note here, you had create opportunities for council to engage with youth during BC Youth Week and beyond. So I'll throw my name in the hat. So please feel free to reach out and let me know what kind of help you need. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Yeah, really exciting and really important work. I've been working on youth stuff for a long time here, and this is ticking all of the boxes that I've heard about before, plus a few more. So that's really interesting. And I want to throw my hat in the ring for your Youth Week, because one of the things that just ask my husband how well I do transporting people places. He says he knows I'll be home when he sees the whites of my eyes. So that being a barrier, maybe that's something that I could do to be helpful on that week. So if that's something that's available, I'd like to help. But I also really like to connect the youth in our region to youth throughout the region, because we have a region where, I don't know, all of my little nieces and nephews that live on the peninsula party in the West Shore and vice versa. So it's always good to know your whole region and know it well. And that's for their safety as well as ours. I mean, we all rely on each other. So I think that could be a really good thing. And I'm looking forward to trying to connect what's happening here at West Shore Parks and Rec with our Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Committee, who is very interested in seeing how these things are working and finding ways to spread them throughout our region.
Very much, Councillor Grove.
Mayor, thanks then for the report, and of course, it's very exciting that this is happening. I think it's clear we need facility and programming and the funding that would then go with it. So I think going forward, it'd be really good to see some sort of a target of what aspirational funding goals that we could maybe present, or we could get a better handle on ahead of the need. Because something like this would like to have legs. And we also have the issue of collaboration with so much going on in the West Shore. I think we chatted a bit about the neighborhood house presentation, which we both attended. And of course, this evening we had a short presentation from Village Initiative. And I think there's so much that's going on right now and bursting, or it's below the surface, it's waiting to burst. And anything you can do and we can do toward helping that come together for a meaningful result would be great. Thank you.
Great. Just two questions from me then, the actual questions. You've got, this is fantastic. I can tell you this right now. I'm pretty excited about this. So I guess my question is, how have you guys decided how you're going to measure the effectiveness of each of these programs? You know, is it just the participants, or what's the metric you're going to be using to determine success?
It's absolutely something we need to nail down very quickly. And my concern with numbers is that it doesn't always show the true reflection of whether it's successful or not. And an example is the Lego group that is run out of West Shore Park and Rec, and it's a staff member from Pacific Center Families. You know, it can fluctuate between 1 and 8. And if you just looked at one youth attending a week, you might think this program isn't worthwhile and one of the resources that one youth is taking. On the other hand, that's one youth who is needing and receiving a safe space, services, guidance, etc. So
I think just the other thing I'll mention about that is one of the grant funding requirements is that we have an independent evaluation team look at the work at the end of each year. And so we will be getting a report that shows some deliverables and working with them to determine the best indicators. We have a list of indicators that we're starting with, but we intend to build it over time and with the help of those evaluators. So I hope that helps.
Yep, that's good. Okay.
I just also wanted to say Lego group and didn't mention, but that's for LGBTQ. I guess
yes,
folks
in our QS LGBTQ.
Yeah, that's right. So her comments as to the number of people versus the need for that type of support are apropos.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. And the second, I guess the second, it's not even a question. I guess it's I heard you, Cindy Andrews, loud and clear. You know, this whole thing on public, they said this at the presentation, and I meant to follow up on that to find out what they meant, like the safety with public transit, and you know what we can do about that. You know, because that's what I need, some guidance, someone to sort of lead me to the water right now. And the second thing is soft places for people, the youth to land. So that's another interesting one, and actually I'll probably try to set up a meeting with Cindy Andrews to discuss that and what we do, what a strategy is, and how the municipality can play a role in it. So heard you loud and clear, Cindy.
I also wanted to stay on that topic. So yes, the city has to work with BC Transit to continually improve our access to transit. Additionally, we are looking at ways to take the program to the kids. So thinking about ways we can make it a mobile, safe place so that we let kids know we might be coming to Hermione's Park on a certain day, and kids who can access that facility without having to ride transit or get a ride or pay for a ride can come. And so we'll pilot a program where we have a mobile service of safe places and some food and some activities and see how that works and see if that will be sustainable and effective. One approach.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. Seeing no other. This was just for information. I believe there was no motion, so we shall move on. Before we start with you, Mr. Earl, I'm just going to take 4-minute break, 5-minute break, because I'm getting pressured by Councillor Olson here. So gotta blame it on someone. So 5 minutes and we'll come back and we'll start with you, Mr. Earl. And then thank you very much. We will reconvene and we'll start off with Mr. Earl.
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff this evening are seeking council endorsement to receive the final draft strategic plan engagement summary and adopt the City of Colwood 2024 to 2027 strategic plan as a guiding document. This report represents an overview of the final engagement collected on our draft strategic plan. The plan outlines areas where council specifically wants to be involved and see more meaningful progress over the next 4 years. The goals and tactics align with the foundations that are in the official community plan, and they aim to address community needs and expectations for how citizens can thrive. This plan was informed arguably at the start by the February 2023 Ideas Fair, but I would argue its foundations were likely more truthfully grounded when you were knocking on doors during the election campaign. The plan gathered ideas from residents in a broad range of topics: transportation, health, urban forest, youth, seniors, arts and culture, sewer service, and infrastructure, with more than 400 folks attending the original Ideas Fair. Between that point and November 23, council met through a series of meetings crafting the plan, which has been finalized, and the plan addended to the document this evening. Between November and January, we went back out for a final round of consultation. That consultation is also addended to this report. And while the engagement shows that public opinion varies on which tactics should take priority and what approach that we should focus on, in general, the data demonstrates support for moving forward with the directions that council has crafted in the draft strategic plan. We're looking for your endorsement tonight. Should we receive that, that plan will form the foundation, together with priorities from the service review, for a new long-term agenda, which would then be addended to council meetings henceforth.
Thank you very much. Any questions, council? If you had the chance an opportunity to read it, I was absolutely pleased with the feedback. I mean, nothing new there. Yes, and I would agree with your assessment. There seems to be some disparity in what people believe the priorities are, you know, which one has the highest priority, but it's all over the place. Really hard to make a conclusion on it. But I think we captured everything, folks. We did well. That's all I can say. And it seems like everyone is very supportive of our direction right now. I'll open the floor to Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that we got some great feedback, and I agree that we put everything in there. I think that that's a correct evaluation, that it very much reflects what we heard during the election. But we have a lot of work to do in terms of public uptake in our strategic plan, because the numbers show, you know, that we really need more people invested in what our plan is, because the numbers of people who are being involved on our Let's Talk Colwood platform amounts to about 1% of our population. When you can factor out the people who aren't from Colwood who made comment, that's not enough. And I understand it takes time to feel comfortable to comment on those things. And I think it is a good direction, but it does leave it up to us to determine who goes first. And I think that's maybe a bit of an opportunity that we missed. But we're here now. And I think it's important to keep our options open to move forward and try to do it cohesively, because I think, you know, there's 7 people at the table up here, and there's probably 7 different ideas who should go first or what should be first. So I think with the guidance from even more engagement, more town halls, more of that type of engagement one-on-one with people, we'll get a sense of being able to take advantage of the first opportunities that come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor. I also just wanted to, I agree with Councillor Excuse me, sorry. I agree with Councillor Day in regards to her comments about the engagement and that sort of thing. I think this plan was done really well, and I think sometimes it's on us. The onus is on councillors to go out into the community and engage with people and make those relationships. And so I think that there are some initiatives that we've started here, working with seniors and different groups and, with the youth group and that. And so I think it is, I think it's well on its way, and I think it formed a great plan. So thank you for all the work.
Seeing no other discussion, can I get someone to move the recommendation, please? Okay, Councillor Day and Councillor Jensen, seconds. Discussion. Okay, all those in favor, and the motion is to receive the draft strategic plan engagement summary and to adopt the 2024 to 2027 strategic plan as a guiding document. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Earl. We'll move on to 8.9, which is bylaw number 1700-10, OCP amendment.
Excuse me, Your Worship. Sorry, we had the two items that were changed off the consent agenda first.
Yeah, that's what I've got.
Okay.
What I'm talking about. 8.9,
Yes, 8.9.
which was 6.3 before. Yeah, so I'm doing it okay. I'm good. Thank you, thank you. Sometimes this guy gets old and he needs that jogging, but I've got it this time. Yes, it is bylaw number 1700-10 OCP amendment, the economic development permit area. And I think Councillor Ward, yeah, you pulled it. So if you could speak to it, thank you very much, Councillor Ward. Whoops.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's that time of the day when the buttons get a little sensitive. Yes, I asked for that to be removed from the for the consent agenda primarily for one reason. At the request of a resident, I reviewed the Environment Committee meeting surrounding this issue, and it was pretty apparent that I don't know how to word it. Well, I'll be honest, I think there was a fair amount of bias in that meeting, particularly with regard to QEPs, qualified environmental professionals, sort of phrase it as an undercurrent of mistrust, that because they've done work for developers, they inherently only bring a developer point of view. And these are very qualified people that work for, all cross sections of industry. And also the sort of inherent bias that the director and professor of environmental studies at the University of Victoria would somehow be unbiased. So my concern is that, we've taken this anti-developer slant from this committee and are just sort of taking it at its word and bringing it forward. And I would like to invite multiple perspectives. First of all, I'm not convinced that QEPs aren't objective professionals. I think that was misleading. Watching that meeting, I would have to agree with the consensus from this individual was that Councillor Grove did a fairly good job of trying to keep a balance and keep that perspective in mind that, that professionals bring professional input and aren't inherently biased necessarily, but it seemed to sort of run away down this road. So, QEPs influence and provide guidance, much like engineers or other professionals. In many cases, they're providing recommendations to developers to protect riparian areas and asking for considerations there. Sometimes their advice is disregarded by the client. But I think it's unfair to assume that because a developer is seeking to do something that an environmental perspective might disagree with, that it came from the QEP. So I will be looking to amend this motion to ask that if we're going to seek an invitation or consultation with Deborah Curran, that we also look to engage with at least minimum of one QEP, and I'm proposing Aquatech Scientific, Corey Barraclough, if she's willing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Earl, can we direct it that way, or do we have to compete it, or How do we go about doing that? If you could comment on it, please.
Thank you, Worship. Should committee's recommendation pass, administration's intent would be to forward this material to Ms. Deborah Curran, so she can choose to provide comment or not. Administration have been directed broadly to seek the advice of QEPs in general on this change, and we would add Ms. Curran to that list. We wouldn't specifically pay for services. We would just provide this. And if Ms. Curran had comment, we would receive that comment and gather it with others.
Okay, so if this is, she's on top of the advice that we've gotten, that we've received so far from our QEPs, correct? Is that what you're just saying to me then?
Should this motion pass, we would specifically reach out and say, Colwood is interested. If you had an opinion on this, please add it to the other opinions we've received on this.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for that clarification. Councillor Grove.
Mr. Mayor, so this is all sort of taken what I had sort of planned to speak to. The environmental committee had its perspective, and I do try to run a meeting where people speak their mind and have an open mind about it. It was discussed. I think it's a bit overstated of both the developer conspiracy theories and the QEPs. I felt that the request or the recommendation to invite Deborah Curran was an attempt to perhaps offer an environmental perspective, an alternate bit of information. So my understanding was that the city would invite, and perhaps the information would come back, the advice would come back. And I'll just state that in the future, I'll strive to do better than fairly good.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So I guess I'll try to add something of value based on having worked with Aquatex and others for the 21 or so years that I've been doing this, and the fact that there's a lot of information to take in, and Aquatex and others have asked me as a councillor for the city of Colwood to consider not just leaving it to the developers to pay for the environmental professionals, but to actually consult them. And a number of them did come forward and offer suggestions and considerations. So I think that we can tend to have a smaller view of what is possible based on our experience. And it's only by Colwood Council showing the leadership in our environmental goals that we are able to broaden that view. So while I don't want to suggest that there's any sort of conspiracy or that environmental professionals are not offering us all of the options that they can could envision for a particular area, they may be, just like all of us, somewhat less likely to broaden that view of what's possible based on what their experience has been too, of what developers are willing to do or able to achieve within a fiscally constrained system where, you know, time is money. So I think we have no inference of ill intent on the part of the environmental professionals, but sometimes perhaps they're not as optimistic about what can be achieved, given that they don't know what our level of buy-in is on council either. So I think not all the cards are on the table at all the time. And it's really important that we put the environment first, because once it's not what it was, it's a lot harder to put the genie back in the bottle. So I think that having a current professor from the University of Victoria provide comment is beneficial. And we're all trying to get to the same goal, which Aquatex and others have been trying to achieve for years, but within a somewhat limited view of what was possible in 15 years ago. It was a lot harder to get environmental regulations in place than now, as people are much more alive to the real risks of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I just got a quick question for you, Councilor Ward. I'm pretty sure, wasn't that Aquatex report part of what I just read there in committee? It was, right? The QEPs. Could you just clarify that for me?
I don't believe it was included. Maybe Mr. Earl can clarify. I do know that the first time I heard from her and a number of other QEPs and industry people was as chair of the public hearing, where there was quite a number of folks that came forward on this specific issue to indicate that they hadn't been effectively consulted. That was where, there was a number, well, it's in the minutes from the environment community and in the public hearing, but there was an individual with like a fisheries group. There was a number of arborists and another QEP and a few others in the audience that there were 3 items in that public hearing. 2, nobody spoke to at all. This one was a fairly contentious issue that they all felt that the city hadn't appropriately consulted with them. So whether there's been any consultation since then, I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Maybe Councilor Grove, you were at that meeting. Like who was the QEP that I just read their report? Sorry,
my memory is just that Aquatech sounds familiar. That's
yeah. So I thought.
But I was just going to speak to the fact that this is an invitation to Deborah Curran to comment. There's no particular meat in this request in terms of actual request for. She does do webinars apparently in the Lower Mainland around these issues, environmental EDBAs, and has had some success apparently. This comes from the Environmental Committee, and I'm going with them, and I'm motivating on their behalf as much as anything, because I thought that another perspective wouldn't hurt. Perhaps Mr. Earl, can you speak further about what the city would be best, what we're happiest with, or have you said your piece? Thank you.
I mean, I believe city staff have firm direction with respect to broad consultation with QEP. Should this motion pass, we will add this individual to that list, but I'm confident that we are actively engaging with the QEP industry on this particular potential bylaw change.
Yeah, so I was supporting the original motion then.
So do you want to make I didn't formally let you make the motion. Councilor Ward on your amendment. I think Councilor Ward amended. Councilor Ward, do you want to make the formal amendment here then?
Respectfully, I don't think I want to make a motion here, Mr. Mayor. Okay. I mean, my main concern, if I can just clarify, was that it wasn't clear to me if we were consulting with QEPs. Again, the public hearing resonated with me. So what I'm seeing from the Environment Committee was this request to reach out to someone who's kind of come out of left field from the committee. And my concern was that, okay, we're going to put all our eggs in this one basket. This person's going to come before us and say what they say. And the consensus was going to be, well, there's the expert opinion. So I wanted to make sure that if we extend an invitation to this individual, that it's balanced with a wide variety of opinions to make the decision. So I don't really see a need to make a motion if, as Mr. Earl said, that consultation is ongoing now.
Thank you very much. That's what I understood it to be. So Councilor Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would make the motion to accept the recommendation as presented.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councilor Day. Call the discussion. Not seeing any further discussion. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Just Councilor Ward. Thank you very much. I'll move on, and it's 8:10, which is bylaw 1995, pesticide use bylaw. And who asked for that to be? Oh, Councilor Jordison. Sorry, Councilor Jordison.
So I realize now, well, I realize you probably shouldn't pull from the consent agenda unless you're objecting to it, but I actually just wanted to pull this just to have an opportunity to say thank you to Gord and staff for all their work done on this bylaw, but also to thank Councillor Olson for moving this forward. It's just it's yet another positive step forward protecting our environment and taking proactive measures to reduce harmful chemicals in our community. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Great. Councillor Olson, are you making the motion then? Oops.
Sure, I just want to say something too,
Oh,
actually.
go ahead, please.
Thank you through the chair. Since Councillor Jordison pulled it, it gives me a chance to talk about it. But I'll make it brief. I just want to, again, also extend a huge thank you to Gord for all of the work on this. I know this was something that was already on your mind with the integrated pest management plan coming out at the same time. I do have a copy of the educational piece that is already in circulation. And, you know, by implementing this bylaw, we are leading the way in the West Shore as environmental stewards. And I encourage our neighboring communities to jump on board with us. And to thank Lynn, who's a resident here in Colwood, for reaching out to me prior to election time and kind of bringing this forward as a concern that she, amongst many others, had. And so we've been talking about this for a while. So I just wanted to commend Gord for all of his hard work, and I'm just happy to see it here on paper. So thank you. And yes, I'd like to make a motion to accept staff.
And can I get a seconder so we can move that, Councillor Grove? And then I'm going to open it for discussion then. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to support this, but I'm just wondering, the only piece I see missing is I would love to see a bit of a buyback plan for my cache of chemicals. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you very much. Wow. He was all ready to speak. He had his boxing gloves on and everything. Okay, bylaws. 9.1, Marcy, if you could read the bylaws, please.
Absolutely. So we have bylaw number 1995, so pesticide use bylaw, given first, second, and third reading.
Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Day and Councillor Jensen. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Next.
Bylaw number 2012, Colwood Main Sewer LAS enlargement for 2330 Souk Road, first, second, and third readings.
Councillor Ward and Councillor Grove. Discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Next.
Bylaw number 2013, Colwood Central Sewer LAS enlargement for 2330 Souk Road, first, second, and third readings.
Councillor Jordison, Councillor Jensen. Discussion. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Next.
Bylaw number 2017, Colwood West Sewer LAS enlargement for 544 Delora Drive, first, second, and third.
Councillor Jensen, Councillor Grove. Discussion. Any opposed? Oh, see none, unanimous, motion carries.
Bylaw number 2023, Colwood Main Sewer LAS enlargement for 544 Delora Drive, first, second, and third.
Councillor Olson, Councillor Jensen, please. Discussion. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you.
Bylaw number 2000, subdivision and development, third reading as amended, and it was due to some schedules being remiss from the last meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Mover, Jordison and Olson. Discussion. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimous.
Bylaw number 2015, road infrastructure improvement, sidewalk projects, loan authorization, third reading as amended.
Jordison and Olson again. Discussion. Seeing none. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
Bylaw number 2020, Public Works Operation Facility Loan Authorization, third reading as amended.
Okay. Councillor Ward, Councillor Olson. Discussion? Seeing none. Any opposed? Councillor, I knew you were going to do it, Councillor Day. Councillor Day. Someone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Bylaw number 2003, Land Use Amendment, CD 40, 2324 Sioux Road for adoption.
Okay. Motion, Councillor Jensen, Councillor Olson. Discussion? Seeing none. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimous. Adjournment? Thank you. Thank you.